Welcome to our CC Clinic stream, where we're going to talk a lot about how to fix little minor CC things at home. Not like we're not all at home when we make stuff. You know, it just feels right to say. Welcome to my channel. My name is Anne. I am SurelySims. I make retro CC for the Sims 4 and whatever I want, whenever I feel like it. This week, we are going to talk about fixing CC. I just said that. Quickly, what is this stream for? Why are we here? Okay, we're not here to be shady little internet people, okay? I'm here to show you how to fix stuff quickly. I'm not here to show you how to use Sims 4 Studio. Ravishing actually has a really great video on like going over all of the parts of Sims 4 Studio. I'll link that in the chat, and I will also link it below the video. When we are done, I'm going to mute alerts boop, boop, so that we don't get any alerts. I'm going to link that right now. I grab beep boop. That's a great video. It's pretty long, but there's chapters underneath, and you can go through if you have issues with Sims 4 Studio. Okay, so we're document. I wanted to really do this stream as a way for simmers, casual gameplay people that are casual enough to notice these things or use a lot of mods. Just as a way to sort of recognize when there is a fixable problem with your CC, something like recognize when something would be small enough that you could either fix it yourself or get it fixed pretty quickly, or B, articulate clearly to a creator an issue that you're seeing with their CC. Now, this gets into the place of, did you spend money for... You're spending money for a product. Essentially, the Sims 4 has a very large modding community. A lot of it is monetized. And if you are downloading, if you're paying for something, if you're subbing to someone's Patreon and they have put out custom content and you learn to recognize these sort of things, I would highly suggest being very kind and sort of informing them that you found a problem with their CC or something that they can fix. Maybe it's a hole, maybe it's a seam, or some sort of issue. So I want to help you guys recognize that. That being said, there are certain ways to go about these things. No one likes being called out in public. No one likes being called out in a public forum. So if possible, just send them like an ask off and on Tumblr, contact them on Patreon, just let them know. Pictures are great. Hey, I found this thing. Just wanted to let you know. Here's a picture of it. Just so don't be, be good people on the internet. And also, even if they're not charging money for the CC, usually creators want to know if their shit's broken. So like I had someone send me and ask like, hey, so I was really excited to use those TVs you made. They don't work. And I was like, what do you mean they don't work? You guys, 40 people liked this post and no one thought to tell me that they don't work. No one used these. So basically what had happened is I forgot to include the tuning file in the televisions that I made. So when I had my bass in, they were referencing the tuning of the bass, but no, I didn't include the bass in the download. I should have included the tuning in the file. So I was just like, this has been out for like a week and no one's thought to tell me that doesn't work. So it's very appreciated. Just go about it in a good way that is productive and not demeaning, and because no one likes to be called out on the internet. No one likes to be told that their little baby they just spent a really long time on is broken in front of their whole following. So just be kind and do the situation as you need. And if they don't fix it, or if they're a defunct creator, hey, at least you'll be able to fix it yourself for your own game. Just don't go about fixing things being like, I fixed this thing from this creator and now you can download it separately. Just, you know, use tact on the internet. And then before we get into it, if you feel like you learned something this week or last week, I do have a Patreon. It's like $2 or something. And I am incredibly unemployed right now. So, and the industry I work in is kind of, you know, having a hard time. But so if you have a couple dollars, subbing, tipping, Patreon goes a long way. There's some fun stuff on there and we like making fun, weird stuff. So I hate plugging myself on the internet, but I had to in my post. But okay, cool. Let's go. Let's get it on. Okay. Not like that. Let's go. So I'm going to talk about some things. We're going to go over a couple things. Some things are very specific. Some things are a little more general. Oh, that's a dresser. Hi. There we go. Some things are a little more very general and quick. Some things are a little more specific, but these are things that people have told me that they would be interested in seeing. And again, let me read my disclaimer for you guys, actually. It's the same one from last week, but it is still a good sort of thing to think about when we talk about these streams. All right, let me sip some tea. Let's go. Disclaimer, I do not claim to be the absolute authority on any things I'm going to show you today. There are a million ways to approach every subject. This is just mine. Like everyone, I am a work in progress. I am constantly learning and improving, but I feel knowledgeable enough on these topics to share my process with you. I highly encourage everyone to seek out outside resources, as well as see how other creators accomplish the same task. Above all, I hope these streams and videos can help you find the fun in learning, failing, and innovating along the way. During the lesson, I won't be responding to chat to keep the video as concise and streamlined as possible, but if you have any questions, you can submit them at any time by typing !Q followed by your question, and we'll go over them together at the end of the stream. And I have a little bot that'll collect up the questions, and it will remind you every so often. So let's get into it, okay? So I have gone ahead and created a whole room of messed, like CC I want to fix, CC that's a little messed up, so I can explain these topics and concepts to you. So this is Testan. She's trapped here in a save where there are no other people. She's in her little Truman show. That's a randomly generated townie. Don't worry about that. But this is a completely blank save that she lives in, just so my game loads fast. So today we are going to talk about a couple things as I scroll. So let's start off with talking, I'll kind of go over what we're going to talk about. First, we are going to talk about fixing and editing slots. So say there's a couple things we're going to talk about. So like this radio from Spa Day, it doesn't slot onto this bookshelf, though it feels like it should. It slots onto the counter, but so that is something that that is easy to fix, easy to change. You do it Max radios, you do whatever. I'm going to talk about that today. I've always thought this, The Sims 4 has a weird scale issue in this game. I've always thought this bookshelf was way too big. So we'll talk about how to size it down, but when we size it down, when we try to put things in slots, we just grab a piece of pie over here. If we try to put things in slots, you'll see that they hover and they're wrong. So we'll talk about sizing things down and to the size we want them, and moving the slots and adjusting them in Sims 4 Studio, which is not too hard. We will talk about fixing seams on clothes and casts. This is a big one I see a lot. I've completely exacerbated the problem on this sweater, but you can kind of see this is kind of what you would see if you see a seam down the leg, or something like this on a sweater or a dress or something. I want to show you how to fix that. Alternatively, if you have no seams and no sharp edges and you get sort of kind of weird shadowing on objects, I see this a lot in build by objects. You'll get this kind of weird dark shadowing around things. I want to show you how to fix that as well. We're going to talk about reducing poly count on items. We'll talk about how to do it dirty, how to do it clean, and we'll play with, I have a file of my high poly fireplace. We can kind of go over that together. changing around spec on build by, and I can pull some casts. I didn't pull casts, but I wanted to talk about like specifically like something like this clock, which is actually just like a piece of glass on top. And I've always just thought these posters were way too shiny. I don't know, they've always bugged me personally. So we'll go over that as well. After that, Bog specifically requested I talk about smushing hair. If you hear my cat playing with the window in the background, that is what that is. Bog specifically asked about smushing hair to fit their Sims ears. And our last thing we will talk about is cutouts, which is a little more advanced. And you can see I have messed up the cutouts on my sink and the store, and we can go over that together. Cutouts are annoying and a little more advanced, but if you see kind of like a sink that you've downloaded and the cutout's a little odd, it's actually pretty easy to fix if you have the right stuff. And if we have bonus for time, I will go over, depending how we're doing, I'll go over Frankenmeshing 2 objects together, which Little Red Riding Sim asked to talk about. But that kind of bleeds into next week's, we make an object, not next week's a holiday, the week after that. We'll make an object together, or start at least. So that's where we're at. My first thing on our list is fixing slots and editing the slot type. So I want to make this shelf smaller. A great way to do this, so in Blender and the Sims, when you open a Sims file in Blender, it shares the same scaling as the Sims in the game. So if you make something smaller by 0.8 in Blender, you'll be making it smaller by 0.8 in the Sims. So a great way, if you have Tool installed, a great way to do that is sometimes when I'm making an object, I will bring it in like quick and dirty into the game. Like I'll do a quick dirty UV on it, bring it into the game just to see the scale, because sometimes I'll make things too big or too small. And then I'll bring up Tool and I will scale it until I'm happy with it. So like if I just think most things in this game should be 0.8. I think that looks so much nicer. So we can talk about, so basically we can open this up in Blender and we can scale it to 0.8, and this will be this exact size when we open it in the game. Then we'll just have to be adjusting these slots. Again, if you don't have Tool, Tool's great. Also, if you're downloading Tool for the first time, highly recommend watching Twisted Mexi's video on it. He has a whole video going over it. It's not that long, but it's really helpful. If you scale down once, this is 0.75. Scale down again, this is 0.5. So that's just some numbers to keep in your head. And I believe if you scale up, it's 2. That's why it's easier to scale things down. Like if you're making deco or anything like that. I always like making things a little bit bigger than they need to be so that they're easier to scale down, because it's easier to scale down than it is up, because it does go to 0.75. So let me double check if I was right. I'm pretty sure I was, but I don't know. It's always good to test if I'm thinking what I'm thinking correctly. So I'm just going to scale this to 0.75 with Tool, and it should be the same height. Oh, look, it is. I remembered. Hooray. Also, if you're going to scale stuff, I think we can get rid of the occluders on this, because oof, that is a shadow on that wall. That is also a quick fix. I'm going to shoehorn that in. That is a great quick fix. Getting rid of occluders. I'm going to write that down actually. Delete occluders. Yay. Yeah, that's a very, very, very quick fix. I do that all the time on stuff. I can't spell the word occluder. Just trust me on this one. Yep, I spelled it really bad. Okay. So that's what we're going to go over today. So again, that's the only thing we kind of have to worry about here. Yes, so we're going to make this 0.8 and we're going to change slots. So I'm going to leave the game. Thank you, Test Ann. And I am going to reset. Yes, I will save and exit. I'm going to reset my screen because it's going to pop over. And I will go get my files. Cool. fixing slots. So let's get our, I called it the cute kit. I have forgotten the name of the kit. It's the Plumbella's cute kit. That's what I think of it as. So I have just cloned this with all of its swatches. Again, I'm not going to go over like how to get clone things in Sims4 Studio. Ravishing goes over that in her video. I recommend it highly. But I have just cloned this object. And I am going to quickly while I'm thinking about it, and so I don't forget later, I'm going to go over deleting Occluders. So to delete Occluders, you are going to come into the warehouse tab on your object. You're going to go down to light. You're going to find what says Occluders. You're going to click on it, and you're just going to go remove. Goodbye. So now it's not going to cast a giant shadow. So if you make it smaller, it's not going to cast this giant shadow and like darken the whole room. They make these for like bigger objects, but once you make them smaller, it's just better to delete them. So that's how you delete Occluders. Quick fix. Number 1 that I shoehorned in, like 0.5. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Let's pull our mesh out. And we will go to fixing slots. LED 0. I'm only going to show you the LED 0 today. Just know that you can export everything. I think this is also something Ravishing goes over in her video. Sims4 Studio has cheats, like the game has cheats. You can export all of the materials in a package, and I'll show you once. So if you hit Control-Shift-C, it'll bring up the cheat console, much like the game. So I can go studio.export all, and whatever folder your package file is, it's going to create another folder in that folder with all of the materials from that object. And I think this works for build by and yes, cast as well. So it's going to pull out all the meshes, textures, thumbnails, everything like that. It's going to stick it in a folder. So if that's like something you don't want to pull out manually, you can do it all at once. And if you save over these files with the same file names, you can go studio.import all. So say you change all these textures, but you keep the same file name. When you import them, it'll just kind of go over the old ones. So good thing to know. I'm not going to do that because it'll take time and I don't want to. But thank you for being here today. So we will open up our blend file, our LOD 0. Level of definition, I believe. I could be wrong. I don't know the names for everything. I don't claim to know everything ever. I'm just going to bring back our screencast keys. I'm going to keep remembering to try to do this. And I will bring it back to a place where it's not so far away. Cool. Goodbye. Also, I can get... I'm going to turn off the gizmo too. All right, so come out of perspective view with Notepad 5, and we're going to do that same thing we just did in the game with tool. We're going to select both of our objects. We're going to hit S. We are going to type on our number pad 0.8, hit enter, and it scales it to 0.8. You can type any number into the Sims, into Blender when you are scaling something. So this is our new LED 0. Wow, we did it. Well, there's the thing about the slots. So we're going to talk about that, but I'll save that. I'll bring that in. And if we come over to our Rigs and Slots tab, you will see the slots that The Sims has so delightfully provided us. Oh my god, there's so little. There are so few slots on this bookshelf. That's like prodigiously less. So let's quickly talk about, well, it's this size. Let's quickly talk about changing slot types. So I believe I still have this document open. I don't. I will open up my notepad. So slots. There are 3 types of decor slots. There's tons of other slots. This is decor slots. You have small slots, medium slots, large slots. Every object has a slot type. And I will show you how to change that. Actually, let me get out our Spado radio. So we had that issue with this bookshelf where the spa day radio didn't slot to it, and it's small, so you think it should. And there's a lot of things in this game that you think it should slot to stuff. So there's two ways to solve this. You can change the slotting behavior on the object, or you can change the slot type on the surface. So let me show you how to change the slotting behavior on an object. And that notepad's going to come in handy very quickly. So if you have a lot of swatches, it's going to be annoying. So this is best to do if you don't have a lot of swatches, or alternatively, there's kind of a workaround that I can show you in a second on how to kind of like cheese it if you have something that has a lot of swatches and you want to change the slot type. Because essentially you have to come down to object catalog. So if I sort this by type, you'll see that this has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 swatches. So you have to do this 9 times for each swatch. So if I filter by slotting and I scroll down to slotting behavior, alternatively, you can just scroll and go find it. It's just here somewhere. Slotting behavior. If you scroll to slotting behavior, you'll see that there's a 3 here. So if we pull up our notepad, you'll see I've written down. So these are the numbers. This is the slotting behavior numbers. 0 means the object does not slot to decor slots. It doesn't slot to anything. It stays on the ground. This would be great. This would be great for deco sims, so they don't slot to tables. She said to no one in particular, but it's just something that I run into a lot. 1 is objects slotting to small slots. So that's our green slots. As you can see here, these are our small slots. It kind of works like a nesting doll. So small objects can slot to small, medium, and large slots. I'll show you what a large slot. I'll actually make this a large slot right now. Quick tip, you can just change this from, it can be, if you already have an existing slot, if you just rename it to like small, it'll make it a small slot and you'll see it turn green. Change it to MED, that'll make it a medium slot, you'll see it turn blue. If you change it to LRG, it'll make it a large slot and it'll turn red. So we have our small, medium, and large slots. So back to what I was saying. Beep, boop, beep. So small objects that slot into small slots can slot into small, medium, or large slots. Medium slotting objects can slot into medium and large slots. Large slotting objects can only slot into large slots. So that's something to think about. Our spa day radio here is a large slotting object. We couldn't slot it to our shelf because it didn't have a large slot. Large slot, I usually think about like if I want to slot a lamp there, I would put a large slot. Because usually lamps have, like big lamps, they'll have like, big table lamps will have like a large slot. So it's easy just to change this. I just changed the slotting behavior to, I'll set it to 1. I mean, it's kind of a large radio. If I wanted to, I could set it to 2. But I will also, let's do this one, I'll set it to 2. And I'll do the third swatch and I'll set it to 0 so it can't slot to anything. Now, hopefully that's in the right order. I can just get rid of the other ones. So this one, this one, this one. Beep, boop, beep. I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna delete like 4 of them just so we can talk about it. Because I'm not gonna try and match that up. That's gonna get annoying really fast. 2, 3. And I'll set this one to 0. I don't think changing that's going to do anything, so I'm going to leave that there. And I'll save that, and we'll test it in game. So you would have to go through and change all of those. And I can show you a cheesy way to do it. Let me actually do that really quick. Sorry, detour. I'm going to show you a cheesy way to change something.
And for that, I'm going to need to open up a new SimSource Studio. Oh, actually, I can get the... No, I'm going to open a new file. I'm going to open a new file. I'm going to show you this. You see here the garbage truck beeping? No, you don't. Sorry. There we go. This stream, I wanted it to be a little more conversational than last stream, because last stream had a lot to go over. So if you guys have like questions, I'll try to address them as we come up. Or if you just want to submit a question for the end, you can type that !Q. So I'm going to create a selective clone of that spa day radio again. Oh, let me see. Game pack, spa day, radio. Next. If I talk, I usually get there quicker. I'll just call this one 2. We will wait for that to export. Okay, cool. Say you have an object, the creator is not keeping up to their mods anymore, and it's got 99 swatches, but a bitch ain't one. So we're gonna just go ahead, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go to Sims, we're gonna hit Control-Shift-C to bring up our cheat console, we're gonna go studio.export all, like that. And then we are going to do a batch export. We're going to wait for that to complete. And then we're going to come up, when that's done, we're going to come up to our tools. So I'm going to let that roll for a second. And it'll make a folder. Here it's working on it. It's thinking, okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to come up with our tools here. We're going to go to color palette. So this is something that you can use, and you can create color palettes. I do temp palettes all of the time, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to add a new temp palette. I'll call this like delete later, because we're just going to use this really quick. We're going to import the palette from the package, and this has all of the colors, tags, everything like this. We're going to note how many swatches there are. We noted there were 9. So we'll save that for later, and then I'm just going to delete all these extra swatches. I'm going to delete all these extra swatches, so I'm just left with 1. So if you ever have to make changes to something like the mesh, if you need to go into mesh materials or anything like that, like you're doing other modding stuff, and you don't want to, or if you don't want to like copy something over and over again, you can do that here by doing this. So I will come into our object catalog. I will scroll down until I get my slotting behavior. Slotting behavior. I'm going to change that to, I think it should personally be a medium slot. It's kind of a big radio. You can change it to whatever you want. And then I will go ahead and I will come back here, make sure that clicked. And then I can add, my cat is throwing around her toy, until I get up to 9 swatches. Or, oh, actually, sorry. I lied. We're going to actually come back to our color palette. We're going to go to delete later. We can import our palette. I'll just say, sure, remove existing. Not import palette. No, that's not going to save it, is it? I would not like to save my changes. I really messed up that. Color palette. Okay, cool. Apply palette to package, not import. Gosh, okay. So now that we've got them all back, we can go and we can check that that slotting behavior worked on all of them. So yeah, they're all 2 now. So we can just like, we'll bring them back, but you'll notice that they all have the same texture. You could do this by hand, or you can just go Control-Shift-C, studio.import all. And then it'll take a second. And it'll import all your stuff. If you're doing this with a build by object, it usually works pretty well. And I get these errors a lot, and it's fun. But if you click between them, they should have all of their proper colors now. So that's a way to get around that. If you ever have to go in and edit like like edit something that you would have to copy a bunch of times, it's a good way to get around it. So that was just a quick little detour. So now we're going to come over here and we're going to import our smaller mesh for this. So we're going to just import this. So we're going to come over here, we're going to import our LOD. We should see it get visually smaller. Yep, there it goes. You should see it visually smaller, and then you should see our old slots are no longer with us. They are currently floating in the air. So we're going to try, I believe, since I think we will have to do each row by hand, but we could try moving them because it looks like they get exponentially taller, but we'll check. So we have to move these slots down to hit this shelf. There's a couple ways to do this. We can click on the slot, we can hit transform, we can kind of guess. Because remember, our z-axis is up and down. We can kind of guess, like maybe, oh, I think it should come down 0.2. But you'll see that that's not actually that precise. So I'll just put that back where it was. So you can guess, but sometimes it's not going to be perfect. An easier way, in my opinion, to do this is we're going to come in, we're going to be in object mode. We're going to go Shift A, we're going to add an empty. And I just use a plain axes. Mr. Bell, hi. I love your work. We're going to add a plain axes, and we are going to set snapping. We're going to turn on snapping down here, this little kind of magnet. And we're going to change it from increment to face project. So this is a great way to like figure out where you want to put slots. So I'll put them right here. I'm not going to change the position. I'm not going to go back and forth with the ones that where EA put them. I just want to make them the right height. So you can come over here and you can go to item, and it should tell you what height it is. I don't think that's correct. So the best way to do this actually is we're going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and it's going to bring the cursor to our axes. So if we come over here, okay, so it was the same. That's just two ways to do it. I've always seen the cursor to select method used, and it'll just give you an absolute sort of like, this is where this is in the scene. So we're going to copy the Z value, and we're going to bring it. I'm going to actually shift select both of these. And I'm going to transform them. I'm going to hit move, and I'm going to paste that value, and now they're perfectly on our shelf. So we can do this with the other one. I left the good cat in the living room because I thought she would be good, but she's decided to be screamy today, so and play with the blinds. So just if you hear anything, that's what it is. So I'll do this again with my next shelf. So I'll just move my axes here, and then I know now that this number is correct. So I'll just copy it, and I will grab this one, and you can, instead of hitting transform, you can just type it in here. Transform is great if you want to like copy something and move it by 0.2. I'll make a lot of slots that way. Like I'll make like a whole, if I wanted to like make a whole row of slots, I can just come in here, copy, transform, say I want to come forward by, I usually do like 0.15 or 0.2. And that's not usually, oh, I hit move. Sorry. That's not usually what happens. I will transform, I will hit offset by 0.15, and then it'll do that. So I can like copy them, transform, offset 0.15, then I can do like, maybe I want even more slots, and I want to copy them, and I want to transform them, but I want to move them back and forth this time. I'm going to do 0.15. I love slots. I need all of them. I need all the slots. You can only have up to like 120 slots, by the way, so just don't get too crazy with it. And then just think about it. Every slot is just a plate waiting to be set down. But honestly, I like having slots personally. So I'm going to delete those. Maybe I'll make this one, I'll bring this one forward actually a little bit. It seems pretty far back. I wonder why. I think maybe I did that. And I'll move it forward, and you know, I'll set it to a medium slot, and I'm going to do that like I did before. I'm going to just select small, and I'm going to change it to medium, and it'll just make it a medium slot like that. And then just move that back a little bit. And just, yeah. We're good. We're good. Things are going great. Things are going great. Okay. Cool. I'll go back to what I was doing instead of whatever my ADHD just wanted to do there. So I'm going to move my axes again. I'm going to note down, I'm going to copy my Z value. Going to change it in this box here. Boop, beep. And then the next one. And also, I think there should be a slot on this box, so I will show you how to do that in a second. I will copy the Z value again. And click, paste, clicky. Okay, now it's in the place it wants to be. I think you should be able to slot things on this box, and I think it's unfair you can't. So I'm gonna add another deco slot. I'll probably put a small one there because it's not a very big space. So I'm just going to move my axes wherever I want the slot. If you want to be like really anal retentive about it, you can look at it from different directions, but try and get it where you want it. I think it would be good. And now I can copy all three of these. And then I'm going to basically copy my second slot. So I have 3, echo small 3. I'm going to copy my X value. I'm going to copy my Y value. I'll copy my Z value. And now I have a slot sitting on that little box there, because I think there should be more slots in the shelf. Maybe I want another slot here. Maybe I'm going to copy this and I'm going to transform it. And I'm going to do it correctly this time. Got to move it 0.2. So you have to think positive, negative. You'll get it right. It's like moving with tool. It's very similar. But now I think I'm happy with this. Maybe I'll copy this, transform it as well. Now I got 2 over there. It's not perfect. I like to make mine. You'll notice that EA slots are very kind of haphazard, so they feel like you're placing things naturally. But if you're like me, I'm like, I need rows. I want to place things wherever I want in rows. So I'll make a lot of things that are nice even rows and I'll duplicate them a bunch. That's how I'll do my slots. But EAs will feel kind of like all over the place. So maybe sometimes you don't want them more than you want them. But we'll save that. And that'll be our new smaller, cuter bookshelf. And you'll notice I haven't changed our other LOD. Oh, and we're going to have to save our shadow LOD as well for this. So I'll go over that just really quick. But it's pretty fast and easy. So I'm going to file, save as, no, save accidentally. I'm just going to call it shadow. Quickly, I'll go over this next week, or the next time we stream together when we make build by. But I need to make a shadow LOD for this. So if you ever see like an object in the game that seems transparent or there's like weird shadowing around it, it's because it doesn't have a shadow LOD, or the shadow LOD is something different or weird. And it'll get, when you use MXAO, it's really easy to see. So I am going to change this cut. This cut's actually already 0. Usually our shadow cut is 0. So I guess our shadow cut was 1 on this, but what you normally do to make a shadow LOD is you would delete the shadow, change this cut to 0, save it out. So now this will be our new shadow LOD. I'm going to bring that in really quick, just so it's like when I bring it into game to show you and go, ta-da, we did it. It doesn't look really funky. But now that will match. If we switch back and forth, it'll be the right size. And then our medium will be large, but it doesn't bother me too much right now. And also, hello to everybody that's coming in. As I mentioned before, I'm not going to be responding that much to chat because I'm trying to get through all of our things today. But I see you and I appreciate you. And then we'we'll pull that into my test folder, and we'll check that game together. Street files, there we go. Audio video, and files. I didn't accidentally, yeah, okay, I just because I had the EA ones in. I was like, why didn't it copy over? Oh my god, okay. So I will get that actually loading up so we can look at it together, so we don't have to skip around to different topics. So I'll get that loading up right now. And we can look at it together. So any questions quickly on slotting, slot types? Did I miss anything? I'll check my document. We went over deleting occluders, we went over changing the slot type, and we went over resizing and moving slots, and calculating where objects go. So any questions on that, chat, while we're on the topic? Yeah. I didn't even know you could pin things on Discord. Or on Twitch. So we will load back in. There we go. You should see both Hilda now. I feel like such a grandma, but you're much more advanced grandma than me, Janie, with Twitch. So we're gonna load in. We're gonna load on Hilda Dance, and we're gonna go take a look at our smaller bookshelves. And because I just think that thing is just too big. This game's for ants. Like, it's something you'll notice. Like, once you start noticing it, you'll notice it a lot. There's like everything in the game feels too big. Like when you ever have that when you're in build mode and you build this wonderful build and then you put a sim in it and everything feels massive. I always think about like that scene from the Adam Sandler movie. Not Adam Sandler. Oh my god, I just stopped talking. I'm so bad at recalling information. We're just like, what is this? A center for ants? Looking at you, coffee tables. So yeah, this is a great way to adjust coffee tables. Coffee tables also have slots. And also they don't have several shelves. So basically, once you make your coffee table smaller, you can figure out what height that your new tabletop is and just select all of the slots at once. Go to that Sims 4 Studio and transform tool and just move them all to that point on the Z axis, and then you're done. You can save it. Watching a Sim shave a razor the size of their face, dangerous. It's so dangerous. Okay, so this was our one we tooled. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go grab our new one. That is the one we made a little bit smaller. So this is one we tooled to 0.75. So if we go to 0.8 again, which I think most things in this game should be 0.8, you'll notice it's the same size. But oh no, the edges are really sharp and pointy. We'll go over that next, actually. But that's not what we're here to talk about right now. So we'll go over seams in a second, but I wanted to show you that we have this, and we'll grab our new radio as well. Boop. And this is our radio with different slot types. And let me pull up that file again just so I can be sure what slot does what, because I know we did we changed them all to different ones. Zoolander, yes. Oh, thank you, Molly. I'm so bad. You know when like people ask you, I was talking about this with Dr. Simcroft yesterday. She's like, someone asked me like what my favorite movie is, and I forgot every movie I've ever seen. That's me whenever I try to recall information. I'm like, yeah, this joke is like really funny. Like, get ready for it. Okay. So our white swatch should be, it slots to nothing. It's not doing that. It's slotting to counters. Let's find out if I did this really wrong. What is our blue swatch supposed to be? Slot type, slotting behavior. So this should slot to small slots, which it is doing. Correct. Good. That's good. Counters are weird. Okay. So if this one should slot to our medium slots, which it seems to be doing. It's slotting to medium and large. And then this one should only slot to large slots, which is what it is doing. Correct. I don't know why my 0 is not working. I'm pretty sure 0 doesn't slot to anything. But, oh, I think it's because the counters have special slots on them for like appliances that are like different than other stuff. But you'll notice it doesn't slot to our dresser. It doesn't slot here, even though it's supposed to. It was never going to slot there. The counters have special slots on them, so it's a bad example. But yes, it did work. I just threw myself through a loop. So, but now if you have like a deco sim that you've made, you can change the slotting behavior to a 0. And so when you're placing them, maybe they're sitting around a table, you're not accidentally slotting them to the table all the time. So that's the behavior of 0. But it's better to keep, if you're not using this for teaching purposes, it's better to, keep it to 1 slot type per object. Otherwise it gets really confusing for everyone. So now we can kind of put this here, size it to, oh, that's a material thing. So we'll leave that the same size. But if you wanted to size it down, you do very similar to the way I did my bookshelf. You would just select both of the meshes, size them down in Blender, size down the shadow mesh as well, and you can make it slightly smaller. But it will slot now. That's just because this has a Fulbright on it, which is a type of material that does not scale. It's just a fun, quirky little Sims 4 thing that it just does. Okay, seams. So, seams. You'll notice that when we brought in our materials, when we brought in our bookshelf, it's got all of these weird little geometric seams on it. And maybe it doesn't look as good as the nice smooth one. That's what we're going to talk about next. This has to do with casts and build by. So the way build by works when you get it out of Sims 4 Studio, also the way cast works, is it separates it at the UV seams. So it'll create these sharp edges at the UV seams, and there is a way to fix this, and it's pretty easy. I had to make all of these seams because it was hard to like show it visually. So I just really messed this sweater up on my own. Alternatively, the opposite is you'll see a lot of custom content that looks like this, and it's got really odd shadowing going on. This is because it has no seams. It's not split out. So we'll talk about the way that the game reads sharp edges together. Yeah, this is something you'll see a lot with like things that are like converted models or something. And we'll talk about the ways to fix that together. So we'll save this. We'll go goodbye, Testan. I'll see you again later. I'll reset up my screen. So we're gonna leave her in her own virtual hell, and we'll come back later. Okay. So let's talk about seams. So like I said, Sims 4 will Sims 4 Studio will export your models and it'll cut it at the seams automatically. So the best way for us to see this is coming off of texture view mode and into solid mode. And even more than that, I'm gonna just change it to object. So the way the Sims 4 calculates what should be sharp and what should be smooth is actually splitting an edge or a face off of each other in Blender. So if I wanted to get that smooth effect that we had on the dresser, I could actually, let me bring up that file for you. We'll go into our second folder. Nope, we'll go over into our second folder. There we go. We'll bring up our dresser LOD, which I have purposely messed up for the point of teaching. And you'll see when I go into solid object view, that you can see all those odd shadows again. This is because I have merged all of the overlapping vertices and taken away any sort of sharp edge. So the way the game sees, and I can do that with our bookshelf too, and you'll see those seams as well. So if I wanted to fix this, I would come into edit mode with tab. I'm gonna hit A, select everything. I'm gonna merge by distance, and you'll see, yes, we have fixed our round bits, but now our flat bits look kind of odd. And there is an easy way to fix this. There's a couple different ways. So we can do it the dirty way, or we can do it the clean way. The dirty way doesn't always work, but it is a quick and dirty way if you're just pulling in something into your game really quick, or if you want to fix something really quick. So the dirty way is we're going to pull over our modifiers panel over here. We're going to go and we're going to add a modifier once we have merged all our verts. Add a modifier, and we're going to add an edge split modifier. Now this is going to try and calculate different angles of edges and split it there. And this is something you can slide around and try out. And like, say I want this to be smooth, but I want this to be sharp. So maybe I'll change that until I see it get smooth again. And then I'll look, oh, am I happy with that? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And I'll save it out, and that'll be my bookshelf. So that's a quick and dirty way. You don't even have to apply the modifier. You just have to put it on and save your file. And then we can bring it in on our bookshelf. This is not our bookshelf. Come back, bookshelf. And I will bring it in to our bookshelf. You don't have to do this on the shadow mesh, because the shadow mesh is just really telling the game what's solid and what's not. So the shadow mesh is you can completely even like merge all your verts in your shadow mesh. It's just telling the game, I can see through this, I can't see through this. So that'll be, we'll check that in game later, and I'll remember to put it in right now. LA is just being the loudest today, so I apologize for that. Los Angeles decided to just pull out all the stops today. So we'll bring that into our stream files. I'll copy over. This is Blender 3 point something, 4 maybe? So a certain question, with Sims 4 Studio, it works with, the new Sims 4 Studio works with like Blender 3.34 on, and I learned in Blender 2.8, and it's just easier for me personally. So I will get rid of that. I'm going to come back to our poor, sad dresser. So I'm going to come out of perspective view because I hate it. And I'm going to go into orthographic view. I'm going to turn on my screencast keys so you guys see what I'm doing. I'm going to move them again. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Cool. So I have basically brought in my object. I have merged all the verts to mess it up. And now I'm going to separate certain things. So there's ways you can do this. A lot of different ways to select things. I will come into face select mode down here. You can go between, I'll talk about this more later, but there's vertice mode, edge select, and face select mode, and that just changes the type of things you're selecting. So like now I'm selecting a vertice. Now I'm selecting an edge. Now I'm selecting a face. You can go quickly between these by hitting 1, 2, and 3, not on your numpad, but on your top keys. So I'll come into face select mode, and if I hit L, you'll notice it kind of selects the whole thing. I don't want that. So L is going to select anything that's linked, but once you click it once, you can come down to this little box that pops up here, change it to UVs, and now it's only selecting the things that are connected on the UV map. So it's only selecting this part right here. Alternatively, if you wanted to select things just on the UV map, you could turn on this little, these two arrows here, and you can like start box selecting flat parts. So what you can do is then just hit Y and start clicking around, separating faces. Can make sure everything's separated, and if you come into the solid object view, you're going to basically see better how it's going to look in game, because this is exactly how the game is going to render it. So you see weird shadows, that's going to be in game.
by hitting Y, I'm basically splitting a whole face. So if I do this, it's not connected anymore. That's how the game recognizes edges. So I want to split out the ends of these handles. So I'm actually going to confine them on the map. So I've clicked one so I can see them all here. So these are all overlapped. If I select these all in the UV map, just box select them, make sure these two arrows are on, otherwise you won't see those. I select all of them at once. Then I can hit Y, and now they're all separated, but the handle part is smooth. If you want to check your progress, you can turn off overlays like we did for our post stream by just clicking this and saying, how is it looking? Do I like this? Do I see weird shadows? Okay, let's tackle those. Alternatively, I just learned if you hit Shift Alt Z, it'll do the same thing, but as a hotkey. Because the way I learned is eventually I get tired of doing something, and then I just say, is there an easier way to do this? And there usually is. So I'm going to go through, and remember, you want to do this, all these little bits here. You want to split all these little bits out. So it's not as easy as the modifier method, but it is going to be exactly what you want it to be. And if you're making your own CC, this is just kind of a way to tackle this. It's not the prettiest thing, not most like glamorous thing in the world to do. Alternatively, if you are using an object, and I like to come into textured mode for this, if you bring an object out of Sims 4 Studio and you're like, God, I hate tries. So tries are basically these triangles. So the game uses tries. When you take an object into Sims 4 Studio that is quads, which is a square or a rectangular shaped faces, it'll automatically make it into tries. So when you bring it back out of Sims 4 Studio, or if you bring out any EA things, it'll make it tries. So if we want to get rid of our tries, let me think, hold up, make sure I remember this. No. Yes. All right. Eventually I made it there. So if you hit, I'll undo that. If you hold down Alt, and hit J, it'll try its best to make it from tries back into quads. And this might make your selecting situation a little bit easier. So it doesn't do it all of the time, but it will kind of help. And then I'm just gonna then now I can just select one face instead of selecting two, which is nice. And if you want to make them back into tries, you just hit Control T. Make sure this looks suspicious. Did I get all of these? Looks like I didn't. And that looks decently sharp. I'll take a look at the legs. I think I liked the legs, how they were, but I think I will do the bottoms of them. So it's nice to do a nice sharp bottom of your legs. I'll find them on my UV map, just box select over them. And remember, if I don't have this turned on, that's all you're going to be able to see is just whatever you have selected. So if you turn that on, you'll be able to see everything at once and select it over here and then edit it over here. Also, alternatively, if you're trying to find something on like a UV map and you're like, what is that? Where is that? I can just select it here and I can just hit numpad delete and it'll kind of focus on whatever I have selected on the UV map. That's good if you have if you're UVing and you have a bit of geometry in the middle and you're like, well, I don't know what this is. You can just select it, delete it. I hit the delete key over here and it'll kind of highlight what you have selected. That's a little more advanced though. I'm not supposed to be talking about that. Apologies. Anyway, I've split out our dresser. I'm pretty happy with it. The rest of it is just kind of a flat texture. So that's all coming from the bump. Here, this is all bump here, which I'll explain on a different date, but I'm happy with how that looks. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to save that out. And I'm going to bring that into our file. We'll go over CAS in a second. So I'm just going to bring in our new fixed dresser file. Beep boop, like that. Shadow mesh is fine. I didn't touch it. So hopefully when we go back into game, we'll see that it has much nicer edges. So I will save that. And I will make sure I pull it into my folder. Otherwise,
we'll go into game and be like, what happened? Why isn't it different? Oh, I didn't move my file. Next, let's talk about casts. So my lovely friend Shubi has made this sweater. She's recolored this sweater and given it little bits of sleeves, and it's very cute. So we're going to talk about something I see with a lot of casts CC. So if you see kind of like seams on arms or legs, this is kind of how to fix it on your end. So I have already gone and just kind of destroyed this thing just for a visual effect. So you can see it here. And I will change this to our sweater texture. There we go. So I've already come in here and just kind of destroyed this as much as possible. But we're gonna do the basic kind of same thing that we were doing with our objects. But the reason I use this sweater is because it has a lot of cuts. Now, when you're dealing with casts, most of the time you're gonna have a lot of cuts in an object. And as long as you're not moving things around or changing where things are on the body very drastically, this should work just fine. Because then you don't have to worry about weights. Weights are when you tiptoe into this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be part of the tutorial. So I'm going to just select all of the parts of so you'll see that cuts are the way the game kind of like calculates how things are going to move. I don't understand it. I'm not a cast person specifically, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's the way the game calculates things. So this sweater has 6 cuts. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put these in a collection together, just so I have a reference, because we're basically going to have to merge all these together and then cut it again. So I like to have a collection, and then I will, nope, don't duplicate linked. Not that. We're going to duplicate collection. There we go. I have made many mistakes in the last 5 seconds. Delete. Start again. Start again. Oh my gosh. I'm going to revert the file. I have made many mistakes in the last 5 seconds. Okay, go back. I am going to put these in a new collection. There we go. I'm going to duplicate the collection. There we go. So this is our original sweater. And then this is going to be what we're working on. So I just like to have a copy of all of the cuts. Just so I can reference, because I'm going to have to recut this all at the end. So I'm just going to hide that for now. Going to go our diffuse map. So if you have a piece of cast with a lot of cuts, don't worry. Sometimes you'll have a piece of cast that just got 1 cut. A lot of CC creators like to work that way, and it makes your life a lot easier. I'm just about to make your life hell. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit Control J. I'm going to turn on my screencast keys. I'm going to hit Control J to join those. So I'll do that again now that we have my keys. I have them all selected. Control J. And then we'll come into our solid view, so it's easier to see those seams again. So you'll see we've got a lot of sharp edges, and we'll see these in the game as well. So if you're working with a skirt or something, you'll often see this like line down the leg, and that's because they haven't cut their seams correctly. So what I'm going to do is, now that I've merged all of this, I'm going to come into Edit View, and I will merge by distance. So I'll show you that with it off, with the overlays off. So I went from this to that, which is great. But again, we're running into issues with like shadows. Like, things should be sharp. Shadows are going to get weird. I'll also see a lot of CC that's got weird odd shadows at the base, and you'll be able to recognize that that's because they don't have their seams cut. So we're going to cut our seams on this together, and we're going to do kind of a mix. I'll show you how to do a couple things. I will re-enable this so we can select stuff. So essentially I want to cut off our hand, which sounds morbid. I'll select linked and face select. I find this works better in face select. Select linked, and I'll just do it by UVs. So I can just select UVs with L, and I'm splitting off these hands. And again, I'll show you the overlay off. So I have it selected. And then if I split it, you can see that that's nice, sharp, and clean now. And so I'll want to do the same thing to this bit of wrist thing. What is that called? I'm not a clothes person. So you can do that by selecting all of these individually, holding down Shift, which sounds awful, or you can come into your UVs, kind of figure out where it is on your map, and then just you want to box select all of these little dots. So essentially, as long as you get that dot in there, it's going to select it. So I can come in, and then again, I'll show you, and then I'm just going to Y, cuff, thank you. We're going to hit Y, and then we're going to select it like that. Alternatively, you could try and hold down Control too. That'll like select it like that. But let me show you kind of a different way. So like say we just wanted to select, we just wanted to cut like this seam here. So if we go into edge mode by hitting 2, we can do the same thing where I just showed you. You can either shift click all of these, or alternatively, even better, hold down Control, and it's going to try and draw the shortest path. So you can't kind of control front to end, but it'll help you a lot more than clicking. And then we'll hit Alt M, faces by edges, which is how a lot of cast creators cut their seams. So if I turn that off, I can kind of show you what that did. Alt M, faces by edges. There you go. And I'll cut it right there. So if it's like a big chunk, I would suggest cutting it the way I did earlier, but if it's a single seam, you could do that. There's just so many places for my fingers to press and so many ways to do it wrong. I keep doing it wrong. It's like Control-Shift-C to bring it back, Control-Alt-Z to like hide the overlays. So I can also see this is where I'm working on my overlay. I'll just probably just do this because I find it easier. And then that'll give us a nice sharp cuff. Thank you, Mel. And I'll definitely want to do that here with the bottom too. Otherwise you're going to get some odd visual sort of shadowing. So I'll just select the bottom, cut it out, and then we'll do this band as well here. Let's see. Another way, so I can select this whole band here. Just get all of those dots. Make sure I didn't get any I don't need. Like that. There we go. And that looks pretty good. And then I try to cut seams, because if you cut some nice seams, you'll avoid as much like weird odd shadowing as possible. So I'll try and cut seams like places it would make sense. Like if I had this lined up here, maybe I would cut a seam there. But I think we'll be okay with this, because I think we're gonna have to split it there anyway, but splitting it shouldn't necessarily make the seam show up. But I'm okay with that as it is. The collar lays pretty flat. So, and I know Shivy doesn't want a seam here, so I won't cut a seam there. Okay, so yes, so 2 ways to do seams like that. You can do it by using Edge Select and Alt M. Alt M, faces by edges, which is hard to see. Or you can do it with Y like you would do an object. Okay, so now we have to cut this back into our 17,000 pieces, which is the annoying part. So the way we're going to do this is pretty methodically. We're going to come over to our object properties, which is where our Sims4 Studio mesh tools exist, and we're going to have to make a whole bunch of cuts, and we're going to have to make them match the numbers that they originally were. So that's why we have our old collection here. But oh my god, if we overlay it, it's kind of confusing. I can't see it. My brain can't see it. I don't understand what's going on. So what I like to do is come into our viewport shading, and where we made it an object, I'll change it to random. So now it's a little bit easier on the eyes, a little bit easier to figure out what's going on. So I'll just hide all of these for now. I only need one, so I'll start here. So I need to make this cut in on our nice mesh. So you can do that a couple ways. You can hit Alt-Z, go into Extra Review, and that's kind of a lot. Or alternatively, we can come back to our good old friend, the UV map, and it can help us. So we can kind of just like do that, or possibly maybe even we select maybe just a row, and then if you hold down Control and hit plus on your numpad, it'll select out. It'll start like growing the selection, or maybe we use Circle Select, our other old friend, and we try and select, and we just want to match that shape there. So we're on this object, but we're matching the reference object. So I'll just hit P selection, and that's going to select out. That's going to split out that selection. And if I come over here, I'll see that this is cut 0, 0, 0. I could turn that up. Come to our new cut. Just change that to 0, 0, 0, 0. And that'll be our new thing. I can hide that if I want. And then I'll come to our next one, which it seems to be our major sweater, which is a cut of 5. So I'll just change this to 5, and it'll be whatever's left over. Okay, and I'll hide that, come back here. So we need to separate this cuff out. So we'll go back in, and we'll basically find this. And we will, this is a good way to, this is actually a great way to use Control plus. Oh, no, we separated it out. I lied to you there. I'm sorry about that. I'm just gonna grab it on the UV map. We're gonna hit separate by selection. So we're gonna keep doing this, and it's a little tedious, but it is the easiest way that I've thought of doing it. It's not, I'm sure it's not the best way, but it is my way that I've come up with it. And I need to match it to our other one, which was a cut of 4. This is, again, much easier on an object that, what did I do? Hello? No, go back down. You're confusing me. Stop that. This is much easier on an object with a lot of smaller cuts. But again, it's still pretty confusing. 4. So I'm just going to keep going. I apologize. It's not super interesting. So we have to cut out the same thing. So this is going to be a cut of 1. We're going to come to our sweater. We can, alternatively, we can try and use the X-ray view, which isn't, I honestly would just do this with the UV because it's just cleaner and it's easier on the eyes to see where you're going. Just make it match that shape. Make sure that looks correct. That looks good to me. I will separate it out. And then this will be 1. I will hide it. I am only talking about having this many cuts because I'm not a cast bitch. Cast is not my forte. This is just if you run into the issue of having this many cuts. I don't know why this would be useful to anyone. EA does. But this is just if you run into it. A lot of CC creators I know will try to keep the cuts as limited as possible, but if you're editing like an EA mesh and this is just something that you run into, it is just the simplest way to keep it neat and clean, in my opinion. And then last one is this bit of chest here. I'll just probably just circle select this one. Just match that shape. But yeah, I know if I was making cast CC, I would probably not want this many cuts. I know there's like a really important cuts like for legs and boots. Like on your leg will have several cuts and it'll change how your sim wears. Like if your sim's wearing boots, how the jean goes. Those are pretty important. Shirts, I don't know why. Sometimes you'll have a cut on a shirt that's just like a single square. And I'm like, what does that do for anyone? How is that helping humanity? Yeah, I won't have the answers. And that should be 5. This should be 2. Right? Yep. So I can just now that I am hopefully, I'm going to save this and I'm going to make another save. It's gonna, because I cut it out. I don't want to work iteratively, just in case. Because if you're going to make like big moves, like deleting a bunch of things in your file, I just make a copy, make a backup. Just so now that this should come in and look nice. Hopefully when we go into game to check it together. So I'll import our new mesh. I have called it new. And hopefully when we go into game, we won't see those seams that I so heinously made on Chibi's very nice sweater. So I'll go ahead and I'll save that. I will come back to our file. Beep boop. And we'll put it in my test folder that I've made, replace, so that when we go into game, we'll see the how nice it looks. So I'm going to start loading up our game again. So, do you guys have any questions on seams, be it objects or casts? So again, like if you have no split edges, then it's going to kind of look like you're going to get a lot of weird shadows. And that's kind of a way to recognize that in CC. So if it looks odd in your game, like you're seeing a lot of weird shadows at edges, it's probably because the edges, they didn't split the edge. Alternatively, if you see like a seam going down a leg, it's probably because they didn't merge those verts, or they got it out of Sims 4 Studio at some point, and the Sims 4 Studio will automatically split it at the UV shells. Unfortunately, with things like objects, it's gonna split it at the UV shells no matter what. So that's something to think about when you're UVing your objects, is that when you bring it into Sims 4 Studio, it is splitting it at those seams no matter what. If you have UV'd it in a particular way, it's always gonna split it at the edge of the UV shell. It sounds like nonsense. I apologize. Let me try and explain while we load into the Testan's personal hell. So this wouldn't, so like this is all connected here. This UV shape is all connected. So if I was to load this into Sims 4 Studio, I would get like, without splitting anything off, this would still look like a rounded edge. But Sims 4 Studio, since these are separated, it will automatically separate these out. So if you're making like an object and you auto UV it or something, you do a dirty UV, it's always going to split it at the edge of this like UV shape where it's not touching anything else. So it's best to do it yourself, but just remember, if you're making something that's like really round, if the way you UV it will matter with objects. Like with Molly's bear, I needed to get the texture much flatter, but I ended up cutting a seam right kind of in the front where the belly is, and you can see that in game because it automatically splits it there. So even if I make it look merged in Blender, when I bring it into Sims 4 Studio, it'll automatically split it. So let's go check on Testan and Boathilda while she's loading. Oh, you can only see Boathilda right now. Oh, cool. I thought I had it set to a capture window with hotkey. Did it not do that? Did it come up automatically so you didn't see any of the things I was talking about? Whoops. I'm sorry. I will go back to that. Anyway, did I fix the sweater? I think so. I'm seeing some things here. See, this is why I hate CAS. So it looks a lot better. I'm still seeing some things here. So I think for this, I think I would have done well to cut a seam up the side because I think it's trying to cut its own seams because I didn't cut one up the side. But the cuffs look good. The bottom looks good. Cast is a nightmare. I don't know how people do it all of the time, but you'll notice our shelf is looking real nice. She's looking around again. This is the one we did with the modifiers. And you'll notice that this dresser was back to normal and it's not, our weird shadows are really gone. So yeah, basically to fix the sweater, I would come in and probably cut a seam up this edge so it's not trying to automatically make extra seams for me. Okay, so that is as far as we're going to talk about seams today. I'll talk about it more or again when we go over build by and making build by things. So I'll take our little guy. If you ever see like this, like, you know how that just popped? Did you see how that just popped? Like, I tried to put it down and it popped. That's, yeah, you see that? If you ever see that in game, that's an LOD issue. Because remember how we left our LODs like bigger? So if it ever does something really strange when you put it down, check the LODs because there's probably something really weird. So like if I zoom out, whoop, there it is, it's big again. Beep. So yeah, and you can see like the door goes back to being better because I only did it at a certain point. So just zoom out and check your LODs. There might be something weird happening. All right, next portion of our stream. We're going to talk about reducing poly count. And for that, we're not even going to touch the Sims or Sims 4 Studio. We're just going to go look at a high poly model. And the only high poly model I got is my fireplace. I can actually pull it up real quick. So when I was making my 70s set, I wanted to make a fireplace that had some geometry on it. And I think I went too far with the decimating, actually. Where's the sun? Hello? There's no sun on this lot. Oh my god, it's completely in the shade. Okay, fine, we'll just stick it here. So I wanted to make something that looked like it had geometry, and I was so obsessed with poly counts back then that I think I killed a lot of the kind of dimension of it. So I'm gonna see today if I can make kind of a slightly higher poly version, but keep it clean still. But I took it down so much that I think I killed all of the effect that I wanted to go for. But, you know, so I'm gonna see if I can do it a little better job this time around. But I'm not gonna get into game with it because it would be a longer process, and you guys don't want to sit through me trying to make this fireplace a little bit higher poly just from the starting point. It'll make sense when I bring up the file. All right, so I'm gonna say goodbye again to Stan. Thank you for being with us. If I wanted to fiddle with that sweater, I would. But I don't. I'm not great at cast, but I don't need you to be great at anything. I need you to be able to recognize this stuff and just try and fix it on your own. Or, like I said, if you recognize it, it's an easy way to kind of talk about, like, be clear with the creator, like, hey, I noticed this. And it's just going to be easier for you to clarify what you think the problem is. And again, like I said at the beginning, don't call out people. No one likes to be called out publicly on social media. So just, you know, tact, kindness. It's very important. All right. So goodbye, sweater. We are going to talk about reducing poly count now. So I'm going to bring in my high poly fireplace. So when I did this fireplace, I used the Island Living Rock texture, and I kind of took the Sculpt tool, made it really, really high poly, and tried to make this kind of rock, all the rocks come out a little bit. So it's not perfect, but it was something. And I think like when I was making my lower poly version, I feel like I killed a lot of it. So I'm thinking maybe I can come up with something that's kind of a midway between the two. But when we go into edit mode, you'll notice, oh, yeah, that's pretty high poly. So I like to work low poly to high poly. I'll only do high poly stuff like this if it's something I want to I'm going to make a copy. Always make a copy. Always forget it, really. As if it's something that I want to bake in a lot of like textures. So like for my couch, I made a high poly sculpt of it. I baked it in my preferred texturing program, which is Substance Painter. And then I used that texture as just an additional kind of added detail when I did the low poly version. So that's kind of what people do for like high poly to low poly. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about decimation. And so say you have something alpha in your game and it's got a lot of heckin' polys on it. What's a quick and dirty way to take that stuff down? We'll talk about a quick dirty way to do it. We'll talk about a little bit of a smarter way to do it. If you're a person, like if you're personally like it's your piece of CC and you want to decimate it a little bit for that nice LOD1 or LOD2. And we'll do it a couple different ways. Okay. So a quick dirty way, and you can see if I pull up this isn't on by default anymore, but if you come over to overlays, you can turn on statistics. So you can see how many tries this is. So this is basically how many polys the Sims 4 is going to read this as. So if I brought this into the Sims 4 as is, it would be about as many polys as like one of those really janky deco cars that I've seen on the internet. Sorry, that was a horrible noise. Hi! Oh, the screen is back. Oh, thank you so much for telling me that. Why is it doing that? Thank you. And I'm going to transition. Thank you, Pauluna. So sorry about that. Thank you for telling me. Again, when things are broken, people really appreciate when you tell them they're broken, as long as you're nice about it. All right, let me kind of just kind of run through. Thank you so much. Let me kind of run through what the hell I was talking about. So you can see this is my high poly fireplace. And if I go into edit mode, it's just like, there's so much. This is so much. This is too much for The Sims 4. This is as many polys as like some really janky deco cards that I've seen online. So their goal today is to take this down to kind of a reasonable human level, and reasonable human level, sorry, I apologize. Reasonable human level really depends on you and your game and what you're willing to put up with. So this is a very personal thing. How low poly is your low poly? How high poly is your high poly? How does your computer work? How well does it handle this stuff? So this is just like, if you want to try and do this, I'll show you some quick dirty ways and some cleaner ways to do things. So, and again, to get to the statistics, it's this little drop down menu. You just check it on and off statistics. And this will tell you this number right here, tries, will kind of be like how many polys it's going to be in Sims 4 Studio, because they make everything into tries. And we'll bring our screencast keys back. And I keep having to move it every time. Let's see, go there. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Paul, by the way. All right. Decimating. So let's start with a quick and dirty way to decimate. There's a couple ways to do this. So you can do this with modifiers, which is a lot of what people do. They will, so when it gets kicked out of Sims 4 Studio, it'll cut it. Remember how we talked about it'll cut it at the UV shells? So basically anywhere the UV is kind of separate on the UV map, it's going to cut it at the edge of those UVs. So they will be, and when you cut it to make a sharp edge for the Sims 4, they're not actually connected. It's just kind of the illusion that they're connected. They're faces that are not, if you pull a face, it's not going to follow it. So I can actually, let me just be clear about that. I'm going to bring a dresser back just so you have something to kind of connect to, because I believe that was, Bonehilda might have been dancing over that the whole time I was talking. So basically these are UVs that are not connected to other UVs. Like these are all connected, but you'll see that this edge, so this edge, wherever this edge is, right here, this is our seam of our UV. So Sims 4 Studio is always going to split this with objects. So this is always going to be sharp, a pure sharp in our game. So you got to be careful where you put your seams. But like I was saying, this is only the illusion that this is sharp. What's actually really happening, and the way the Sims 4 calculates sharp edges, is these are not even connected. These faces aren't connected at all. So if you were to go in and start decimating this with the dirty method, you're going to start seeing gaps, which is I see a lot. You're going to start getting these little gaps in the mesh. So if I was to take this, actually, it's already very low poly, so I don't know what's actually going to happen. And I was going to throw a decimate modifier on it. You're going to start seeing gaps. And we don't want that. We want it to be kind of like a boat. We don't want any holes in our boat. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So with my extremely high poly fireplace, which I believe should all be connected, but because this was just a bake, but I will just merge my verts, merge 0 vertices. It was all connected anyway. But that's what you would do if you pull it out of Sims 4 Studio. You would come into edit mode, you would select all the verts, you go you would merge by distance and get rid of any sort of gaps that will be forming. Okay, so we are going to come in. A first dirty way to do it, very common, is we're going to use the decimate modifier. So the decimate modifier, it's going to be kind of hard to see, so we're going to have to watch the tries up here. But I like to do, when I'm making my LODs, I will load in my like highest poly, which usually isn't that high. I will have the texture on it, and then I will export it with the texture on it, because it'll open it up in Blender with the texture. Because when you do this, you can see there might be some stretching of textures. So you kind of want to start just sliding this down. It's a very high poly. So you'll see I've gone from about 120 to 50,000, which is still way too high in my opinion. So I'll keep sliding it, and you'll see it's lagging a lot because it's got a lot of polys to work with. So I have done too much. I have gone all the way because it was lagging. But this is at 16,000, and I'll say, am I happy with that? Is that where I'm at today? Okay, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. But then you'll run into the issue of, if I go in, I know I'm gonna see all of these shadows here in my game. I know it's gonna look odd. So you can actually solve that. If you're just doing something quick, something dirty, you can solve that with our edge split modifier again. So it's gonna try and split the edges. So you just wanna kind of put this, I'm not gonna drag it because it's gonna take forever to calculate. So maybe I'll do like 60, and I'll check and see, does that feel good to me? Will I like that in game? Is it gonna be weirdly sharp in some places? Is this gonna bother me here? Let's go back to 60. Yeah, so it's quick, it's dirty, but it will work. And then you could save this model out and bring it in. It would take a hot minute, because I mean, it wouldn't take that hot of a minute because it's only 16,000 tries, but it would take a hot minute. The longest thing I've had to import was like 2 hours, and it was like 250,000 polygons, and it was horrible. It was horrible. I don't recommend it. So that's a way to decimate dirty. And if we come back to our textured mode, this would just be a good time to like check, like, because the texture is going to cover up a lot of your sins with this kind of stuff. So I would check, be like, do I see any visual stretching? Especially if it's going to be like an LOD1, or because LOD1 is not even that far away, and everyone clones those dang books, the children's books. Everyone clones those to make their clutter off of, usually. And those don't have a very far zoom distance for LOD 0 to LOD 1, so it'll pop pretty immediately. So if you're doing it like that, you'll want it to look okay. When you zoom out, you're not losing too much. But that is a way to get it down. 16,000 is still, in my opinion, a lot, but a way to think about it is, how big is your object? Is it a 3 tile? Is it a 2 tile? 1,000 polys per tile is keeping it pretty low poly. So if I wanted to get this thing down to like, it's like sub 10,000, you'll see this is easy. I can fix this later in the UVs, but I'm just looking at the rocks. We'd have to, and I believe this is how I did it originally. And knowing what I know now, I would try, yeah. So you lose a lot there. Knowing what I know now, I would probably try and do it a little cleaner. But that is a way. That is a way. And you don't have to apply these. You can just import your model in, check it in game, see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you can come back. You can adjust these values. And it's pretty easy. So I will, let me duplicate that because it's nice to work non-destructively. And I'm just going to get rid of these for now. Another way to bring down our poly count in a dirty fashion is you can do what is called a limited dissolve. So I'm hitting delete. I have all these selected and I'm hitting delete. And a limited dissolve is basically going to look for vertices that aren't supporting the geometry and just delete them. And this is a really dirty way to do something, but it can be useful, especially if you have like a flat surface. So it's basically deleted all of these verts up here that were not supporting geometry because it's just a flat plane. And it's kept lots, but you'll see that you have these odd squares and odd patches. And when we triangulate all of this, we may have 12,000 faces now, but when we triangulate all of this, it's going to be about 47,000 tries, which, I mean, you talk to your god, you let him know if that's high or low poly enough for you. It's all up to you and what you want in your game. So if I was to come back into edit mode, I'll check for visual distortion. My rocks look okay. I can even go back in. I can decimate this further. We'll see. That sounds like, so are we getting holes? Is that what these are? No, just odd little guys. Okay. So I'm gonna keep going on this. And I can get it down to about 10,000. Yeah, geometry is gonna look a mess. Let me show you what happens if I apply this. Oh my god. So it's something. Is it clean? No. Did it work? Yeah, it's something. So if I come back in, I hit Control T, it's gonna try and triangulate it. You'll see the UV got messed up here. I'm not too worried about that. I can just put re-UV that somewhere, but then you'll have all this kind of odd geometry. But it might work for you. It might work for what you need. So yes, so if I don't decimate this, I can still go in here and then just triangulate this, and then that's kind of what it would be. So you cut it down like into a third, which is something at least. And it's quick, it's dirty. It doesn't destroy the UV that much. But if you're finding that you're really destroying the UV, or maybe you have something that's like a flat plane, or like you're doing a plant or something, and you don't want to touch these, you really don't want to touch these bits of flat that you've done, or maybe you're really proud of the UV work that you've done here. Or maybe it's just like a separate object altogether. So I wouldn't necessarily, let's say like this is a piece of a plant. Just go with me for a second. Let's say this is a piece of a plant, and then when you're throwing the modifiers on it, it's kind of disappearing. It's eating itself. There's two sides there. So if I was to like Shift D, flip these normals. So like say this is something that they'll do a lot, like creators will do a lot if they want something to be double-sided. They'll like duplicate the face and flip it, and that way it'll appear double-sided in the game. There's also different ways to do that are better, but I'll talk about those at another date. But then you go to decimate it, and you go to merge all those verts, and then, oh no, you've merged those two planes because they were right next to each other. What you can do is you can just select all of this, hit P, select it out, and just while you're decimating, you'll not be decimating the part you want to save, you'll only be decimating the part that you are wanting to be lower poly. So now I'm leaving that well alone. and only working on the fireplace. So just a way to think about while you're working. If that is an option, you can just select out stuff that you don't want to touch and you think is just fine and only work on the parts that you can. Alternatively, you could hit L and select them on the UV map, and maybe you only want to select just a certain part and work on that part, and you can pop it off. Just remember that wherever things are touching, you will want to keep from having seams there, so it's better to do like big chunks at a time if you can. So that is a way kind of to dirtily do that with our limited dissolve. And I will duplicate this again. Actually, I don't need that one, because that did that destructively. That is a more destructive way to do it, because you'll lose your, so always make sure you're iterative. Because these are non-destructive, modifiers are non-destructive, so basically means that like if I don't like it, I can just delete these and it's fine, it's back to normal. But if I didn't like the way that this worked, I can't get that work back. Essentially, like this is working destructively. I won't be able to go backwards. So that's why it's always better to work like iteratively, which means saving out before you make like really big changes, or non-destructively, so you can like go backwards. Just a thought, just a thought. So I'm gonna get rid of these. And now we're gonna talk about working a little cleaner, which is a little slower. But if you are a person that makes CC and you do it a lot and you like to release it, this is probably going to be a little better for you, and just a good thing to keep in your pocket too, because sometimes you don't like the way the modifiers work and you want to do be a little more specific about it. Yeah, okay, so we are going to start. Ooh. Hello, thank you. So we're going to go into edge select. Basically what I'm going to try and do is select every other one of these little edges and start just kind of deleting them. So I'll scroll down Control Alt, and it's going to select kind of every edge in this row. And as long as your geometry is kind of clean and makes sense and is quads, it will do this. If it's triangles, remember you can hit Alt J to untriangulate. So I'll show that. Just Control T will triangulate. Alt J will untriangulate. But if it's quads, it'll make your life a lot easier. And if your geometry is clean, connected, and your loops make sense, you can do this. So what I'll do is I'll Control Alt click to select this edge loop. Alternatively, if I wanted to go up and down, I would select kind of the horizontal one, which I will do in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come, once I have this selected, I'll come up here to select, and I am going to checker deselect. So this is basically going to deselect every other edge on my mesh. So now what I will go to do, I will come back to select. I'll select similar, or no, I will select loops, edge loops. So this is going to come, it's going to take all those things we selected, it's going to select the whole edge loop. And right now we're at 125,000 tries. So if I hit X and dissolve edges, it's going to take us down to 72,000. So, but it is still keeping that nice quad geometry. So I'll do this exact same thing, but up and down. I'm going to select, I'm going to checker deselect, and I'm going to select loops. There we go, made it, brain made it. And it's going to select these edge loops. So be careful out here. But since I subdivided this within Blender, I think it's okay. So I'm okay losing those edges. So just be careful what you're going to lose. So double check it. And we're down to 47,000, and we're still a little bit cleaner. So now could be the time maybe you come in and then you just start hand selecting edge loops. So I'm just holding down Alt and Shift and grabbing every other one, because I noticed that the geometry here is a little bit thicker. So I'll just dissolve those edges so it's nice and quad-like. Do the same thing over here. solve those edges. Basically, you want to look for edges that aren't supporting the geometry, and you can clear them up. So I like to do that while I'm modeling anyway, is just get rid of any sort of edge that's not supporting the geometry, because it's going to make your life easier in the end. And if I want to go even further with this, we can just do it again. You can just select, check or deselect, select, loops, edge loops, solve edges. And then you're going to do that until you're happy with it and it looks the way you want it to look. And now I think there's too many here, so I'll just do it one more time. Select, check or deselect, select loops, edge loops, X, dissolve edges. And now we're at 31,000. And then I would, if I, and you know why we're at 31,000? Because I didn't do the bottom. Just do this real quick. So you gotta be yeah, so this is the same thing where like be careful what you're selecting. So like maybe I would split out that there. Yeah, the bottom, now you can see this is how the whole thing used to look, and now the bottom looks much better. I mean, worse compared to the top. Oops. Alright, so we'll double check I'm not getting rid of anything I really care about. And then we're slowly... I also think this is still too many. So this is slower, it's not dirty, but it will keep your geometry cleaner, especially if it's something you're going to release and you like keeping your meshes nice and clean. Loops, come on, loops, edge loops, X. But yeah, if you do it too much, you're going to lose. Yeah, that did dissolve them. I'm just going blind. Okay, cool. If you do it too much, you'll lose your important geometry, so be careful. You're not completely getting rid. Always make copies. Careful you're not getting rid of important stuff or stretching UVs in weird places. Because I think I got rid of too many here at one point. And then, yeah, so I've lost a lot of the geometry that I had done on the side. But since this is just a demonstration, I'm not going to worry about it. Oops, edge loops. And then I would probably, since I don't want to select this, I would come in here. I would go into X-ray view, and then I would just box select. So I hit B to box select. I'm gonna hold on Shift to deselect, and just like deselect everything that has to do with that. And then I can dissolve edges that way. So now we're at 9,000 and our geometry is a little cleaner, and we could still come in and clean it up. Like this is still very thick down here, but that is a way to cleanly decimate your model. And then for like the even lower LODs, I would then probably do the modifier because you're going to be out way further, so you won't notice as much. But that is how to decimate smartly. That was number 3 on our list. So hooray, we did it. So we took this down from 120,000 polys, and we got down to a comfortable 9,000, which, I mean, again, your definition of low poly is between you, your game, and your computer's processor. So I will save this probably as copy just to work. So I have that old version as well. Cool. I will look, just everybody look at that. Very important to me. Specular. Next up, we want to talk about Specular together. So, Specular is tricky. She is tricky. Specular maps are very odd. So, we're going to come in. I'm going to pull up our poster. We'll start with our poster. So I've always thought that these posters in the game are too shiny, and too dang shiny, and it's always bothered me. So I'm going to try and fix that. So there's a couple ways to fix this. You can completely destroy it by just putting in a blank specular, which is a file that you can find on the Sims 4 Studio forums, or you can try and adjust it. So I will go ahead and I will export the specular, which Sims 4 Studio now lists the normal specular, and it's all labeled. Where back in my day, we had to go into the warehouse and we had to find it in our file. But I will go ahead, I will grab the specular, I will export that into my folder. If you call it, if you do a DDS image and you got an older version of Photoshop, it should save all the information. I don't have an older version of Photoshop, so I'm just gonna pull it in Photoshop as is, and then I'll kind of show you how to cheese it up. So specular in the Sims 4 is very odd. It's very odd to figure out what color it should be. So when we pull out a specular map, it's gonna be kind of a weird looking color, and I'll make a bunch of copies of it. But first it looks like there's nothing there, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna copy this a bunch of times. Please, no, Photoshop, be good. So we can see that color come through. This is not a good way to do this, but it is a way. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. So when you make speculars fresh with build by, you'll usually use big blocks of color like this. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to merge visible. And then I'll do it again. Copy it again, there we go. So when you do your speculars with build by, you'll usually see like big blocks of color like this. And they all mean just something different. Like depending on what color it is, the game is going to treat it as a different level of shine. And then your brain goes, okay, so how do I calculate that? And not even that, in your channels, you'll have an alpha channel and it goes from gray to black. And depending on what values of gray you make some stuff, it's going to interact with the shine outside differently. There's a way better explanation of this on the Sims 4 Studio forums, but it's confusing no matter what. So I usually, if I'm making build by things, my kind of go-to is I usually just do like an 87% gray on my specular, and I just kind of move on with my day. Unless I need to make something extra shiny, then I will go in and be a little more minute with it. But the question today is, I just want to quickly fix this. I know that this, on my diffuse map, if I look at my diffuse, I know this is where my image is. I know it's too shiny and I want to fix it. How do I fix it? So what a great tool, and I will link it, an excellent tool for this is Little Dika's Specular Ball, which sounds odd, but I will put it in chat and I'll put it below. Little Dika came up with this kind of file a few years ago that is great and very handy and looks insane. I'm going to pull it up right now. And it's basically a way to calculate specular and kind of get that color that you need for your Photoshop file. So it's this whole node structure, this whole node tree that looks insane. It blows my mind that he came up with this. And so it looks kind of just flat over here, but if we change it to rendered view, there we go. If we change it to rendered view, it's going to kind of emulate how the game is going to sort of use those colors to show specular in game. So we kind of have a red right now. So you'll see that red is kind of really high shine and very sharp. So basically what we want to do is we want to play around with the ball and kind of find a color that looks good to us. Interesting. So maybe I'll try this blue, which is a lot of what Substance will spit out as its default, is a very close color to that blue. So you can either like right click on this, I believe. Yeah, you can either like grab the hex value from this. Alternatively, if you have Photoshop or maybe another image editor will do this. Basically, let me make this smaller just as an example. Just as an example, Photoshop. Basically, if you have Photoshop, you can kind of select off of your screen with your eyedropper tool. So like if I want to get this blue color, I can either copy the hex code from here and then open this up manually, put in the hex code. So like click this open, copy and paste that here. Or alternatively, I can go grab my eyedropper. You have, very important, you have to start on your canvas, click, drag, hold, grab that color. And then I would go ahead and I would make a marquee, new layer. Let's do it where that big white square is. And I would put my color there. And that would be my new color for my specular. It's very fun. It's a great file. And I would hope that that looks okay in the game. And don't worry about all of whatever's happening here. If I was doing like, maybe I would merge these again. Basically, the color of this is like the transparency of these. This is being controlled by the alpha. And I just made a new alpha that was like 80%. So it's only going to be about 80%. So it should, when it goes in, it should look okay. Alternatively, if you want to work off the PNG and you don't want to do all this confusing shit I just did, once you get that color, oh yeah, I think I can't copy because it's a new file. 1 second. Just gonna call that spec. So if I, alternatively, if I just bring in like the raw kind of file, I could just, you know, like delete this white square and fill it with my new fun color I like more. And then bring that down to like, so if we did 80% alpha, it would be like 20% blue. So the inverse, and I could save that as a PNG instead. So this would be new spec. And that's kind of a way to get around it without using DDS. And if you're not someone that makes a lot of CC, so you'll see that now if I look at it, it's still very like, it started kind of very transparent, but now it's still very, it's also transparent, nice and dark, the way we want it. If you're a person that makes CC and has DDS set up, I'm not going to go over it. You would just have a alpha channel set. I set it pretty like at 80%, 90%. And you can have full color like this, and then you would just save as DDS instead, which is a format that The Sims uses a lot, and it's a little more advanced, so we're not going to talk about that right now. But if you save it out, it'll show you a little preview here. Looks like there's nothing there. Good, that's exactly what we want. I'll just save it out properly. So now if I click on our DDS, there's no preview available, but if you load it in, it'll look correct, hopefully. Let's find out. So we'll start with our specular. So you'll see it's right here. So if we load in our new spec, you'll see that it has changed. Something has changed, something is new, something is different. And if we load in our DDS, you'll see that it is also changed and different. So let's just do our PNG as kind of like a proof of concept. So we'll save that out, and you only have to do that for the whole file. They all share the same specular, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So I will save that, and we will move that file into our test folder so we don't forget. And another thing in the game, sometimes you'll get these objects that are like really blurred. I didn't kind of talk about this, but this clock feels very, very blurry when you look at it in the game. That's because it has physical glass on top of it. Yeah. So it's got this like glass cut here. You can kind of see the glass. So that is something we can fix, and that's because it has 2 cuts. So you'll see, if we go into our meshes, you'll see it has Fong, which is kind of our basic sort of material. And then we've got glass or object translucent, which is what's causing that odd distortion with the clock hands on the object. So something we can do to fix that is we can actually fix that in the mesh, which is very easy. And we also only have to do it for one because they all share the same mesh. So if we open up our LOD, so sometimes it's not the specular, sometimes there's just a piece of glass here. So if we pull it out, yep, there it is. So anytime, the reason you'd have more than one cut on a build by object is that they have different materials and the materials act differently. So if we go into the edit mode on this, we'll see we've got some tries. We have a couple options, a couple ways to solve this. We could just, you know, move it back into it till we hide it. Say it's like a pretty high poly thing. Say it's got more than like EA's polys. You could just select one poly here, hit Control I, delete, faces, and then kind of just make it really, really small, and then move it into the clock. So we basically eliminated it. But why don't we just delete the cut? You can't. You can't delete the cut. Because it'll just, if you delete the cut in the file, when you go to import it back into Sims 4 Studio, it's just not going to change the glass cut because it doesn't see one in the file, so it'll just leave it as it is. So what you have to do instead is keep the cut, keep like one face, but you just move it into the mesh like that, and you can save like that. And then we'll re-import it. And we should see that glass kind of haze go away. So we should see, yep, there it goes. So now, I don't know, does that look better to you? Ooh, maybe it does. Maybe that's what you've always wanted. But it's something, and that's just a way to kind of solve if it's just not the specular, but it's like some glass or something. So we can put in that in our stream files, and we'll see if our game actually launches correctly this time and doesn't cover up my entire screen. So do we have questions on specular? Specular is hard. It is so much, but it is something that you learn over time. There's since if you look up specular Sims 4 Studio, there's a whole kind of page on here's what all the values do. X, Y, R, G, B. Let's double check. That bone held is not dancing on top. Okay. Yeah, RGB. But I found the best way to emulate specular and kind of figure out what you want is with the little spec ball from Little Dika. And it's really great because you can also, if you're like working on something and you got like a normal map, you got a diffuse, you can just load it in. All you gotta do is instead of changing it to a color, so because like, we can make this diffuse any color we want, instead of changing it to the color, wait, hold up, we can. Where's it going? Oh, here. You just take this, go like that. Just connect that, and then you can load in your diffuse of your object instead. Same thing, we could put in our specular we just made, if we want to. So we could put in our specular we just made. And we'll say, is this what we wanted? I don't know. We'll figure it out. But if you loaded it in with the diffuse as well, it'll look different. So maybe this will be a trash fire. Let's find out. Specular is tricky. That's why I also, my Photoshop, I have like some colors of specular that I always like to use for certain things that I've found work for me. So I save them as swatches in Photoshop. So like this blue here I use a lot for metal. This is a different metal that I recently found. This is more of a matte fabric color, this red. Don't know what this is. Don't remember that one. Blacked out while making that one. But those are just certain colors that I know when I'm making something with metal and I want it all to match, I will just fill that part of the diffuse map with that color. I will usually just set the alpha to something like 80 or 90. and then export as DDS and move on with my day. But you never want it to be kind of solid like this because this is going to be a lot. You always want to make it, especially if you're just working with a PNG, like the whole thing should be about 20% transparency. That's usually a good rule of thumb. So let's see how Bonehild is doing. She's still dancing. Seems like she is. But I think we're getting into the lot because she's doing that thing where she stutters and goes faster. Hooray! So you guys should be able to see her now. You can't. You can't. Let's see. What about now? Did I hide it? Yes, I did. I'm so good at the internet all of the time. There we go. There we go. Now you should be able to see some man in her little test prison. Okay. Cool. So let's take a look. I believe this is just the EA one because I didn't make a default override or anything. But let's take a look at this custom one we've just made. There we go. Okay, so you'll see it had a very shiny white specular before, but now when we look at it, it seems pretty matte. And then we can take it outside too, because that kind of X value, or that alpha value, is kind of more about how it interacts outside. And it looks pretty good, and I actually quite like that. And then since this is the same specular that all of the posters use, I could basically just take that and paste it in all the other ones or make default overrides. And because I've made like posters in the past and I'm like, I like them, but they're very shiny. And I kind of like that more. Or maybe you maybe you don't like that, maybe you want a little bit of shine, you can just go back in, find a new color you like, and do it like that. I'm trying to move around the Sims like it's Blender and it's not working. Okay, so now we have our new clock with the glass taken off. So you'll see that not as shiny, but also this distortion kills me. So sometimes it's not distortion, but like on the old base game ones, like this one looks okay, but I think it's because they're not using glass or objects translucent. They're using more of a Fong, or it could be wrong, but that is how you deal with specular. So thanks for that. I hope that helps somehow. It's a tricky little process, but we'll go over it more when we make objects, or we'll do it again in Practice Makes Perfect. Okay, what do we got next on our list? Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out, by the way. We are almost to the bottom of our list. I don't think we'll get to Franken-Mushing today, so we'll start with that when we do our objects. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the Sculpt tool and smushing hair. And this is for Bog. Bog, I hope you're here. I hope you're awake. This is for you. This is for you, Bog. So I'm gonna go ahead, save and exit, come out of Sims. Bog, I'm talking directly to you now. No one else. Everyone leave. No, please don't do that. I'll get lonely. So Bog specifically asked me about, hi, I'm glad you're still awake. Sorry, it's so far down. We're getting into the, like, this is a little more specialized. This is a little more tricky, ending with the trickiest thing. So we started really easy with slots and then fixing seams, and then we get, more and more, it starts to get more tricky. But I hope you found little nuggets of helpfulness throughout. So this is, Bog specifically asked me about smushing hair. So, because Bog's character Sax has pointy little ears and they don't like how they clip into the hair. I believe, yes, I pulled out the hair LOD. So we're gonna use this lovely Sims Trouble hair. And this is like stuff for personal use. Don't go redistributing this. I mean, creators' terms of use are just a kind of a very kind sort of, please don't do this. Legally, I'm pretty sure everything we make belongs to EA, but, I'm not a lawyer. So I'm only going to do this on the main one today. I'm not going to bother with the hat chops, but you would do this very similarly on the hat chops. So hair, similarly to objects, will come out with, from Sims 4 Studio, with a lot of, like, all its edges cut, and you'll see that you get kind of odd sort of things. So it's like trying, but you'll get these like weird sharp little edges as well. So what you want to do with that then is just select everything like we did with that. We're going to merge it by distance right now, and we'll split it later by UV islands. But for our purposes today, we just want to merge it, because when we start sculpting things, if you leave it split out like that, your edges are going to separate, you're going to get holes. So since we're specifically working with the box character, I'm going to say goodbye to our default sim, and I am going to, similarly to our pose workshop, I'm going to bring in Sax, and we're going to delete the rig. No, listen, that was the whole man. Delete the rig. We can also, yeah, we'll just leave it as is. So we're going to talk about smushing. And then I will do that same thing I did the post workshop. I'm going to make them non-selectable, so I'm not actually clicking on them accidentally. And you know, it's always good. Screencast keys. Screencast keys are always a delight, and I love having them on my screen. There we go. We can learn together. I apologize if I missed them at any point. I'm really trying to keep them on. I will take the diffuse map from the hair. Actually, I probably don't need it, but we can come back to texture mode now that we've done that. We say, hi, Sax, so beautiful. I love your blonde wig. So beautiful, Sax. What a beautiful wig. So if it's a symmetrical hair like this, there's a pretty easy way to do this. So we're going to basically come off of object mode into sculpt mode. Blonde Sax. Hello, blonde Sax. What a beautiful wig you have. And we're going to go to here to tool. And then I want to turn on symmetry. So we're in sculpt mode right now, and I'll bring our tools back. And this is just one of the many modes that Blender has, because Blender can do basically anything. You're a beautiful Barbie. And I'm going to turn on our symmetry, since this is a very symmetrical hair, and that's going to help. And I will move our screencast keys again. Come over here, screencast keys. And I will make our, I should be seeing, yes, so you should see the two dots kind of mirroring each other. And if we look at them from the front, and we can make our brush size bigger or smaller. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the grab tool. So we need to find our grab tool. And this is just a quick little fix that should help as long as you're not moving stuff very far. We're going to make our brush size bigger with the bracket keys like you would do in Photoshop. Alternatively, I believe you can do that here. Yeah, you can drag it here. I just find the bracket keys better. And also if you zoom out, the brush gets bigger and smaller, so keep that in mind. And then I'm just going to push the hair. I'm going to push the hair in Blender like this. And I'm going to try and get it behind the ear. And it's very important that you merge all the verts by distance. Otherwise you're gonna have big gapy holes while you're doing this, and it's bad news bears for everybody. So you want to basically do this till it looks okay. If you want to smooth it, you can hold down shift and like click once. Be careful with this, because it'll kind of destroy geometry sometimes, but it will also help with the smoother appearance in certain areas. And we can check the other ear. And yeah, that looks okay. There's some weird texture stuff happening here. I don't think that was my fault though, so I think that's just kind of how the hair is. But that looks okay to me. And we're seeing, so this is the holes that I'm afraid of. I think it's fine. So that's just a really quick fix. You would do the same thing with the hat chops, or just if you're a hair aficionado, you wouldn't be watching this video because you'd go, oh God, why is she doing that? But you could make your own hat chops. I'm not good at hat chops. I'm not going to talk about hat chops. I'm not going to touch the hat chops. But you can go back into object mode. And you can basically, what I would do is I would, like, if I'm not doing hat chops, if I'm only doing this, I would delete the hat chops. Because that way, when you bring it back into Sims 4 Studio, it's not bringing in hat chops that have odd sharp edges, because then now we have to go in and we have to split this hair up. So an easy way to do that, so because again, if you don't split it, you're gonna get really weird shadows. It's gonna look like a really weird clay blob in game. We don't want that. So for hair, an easy way to do that, Nolan showed me this awesome tutorial, which I will link right now because I have it pretty saved. I think I saved it pretty recently. And I'm gonna link that in chat real quick. Okay, all right, Avast, thank you. This is a great tutorial because I was recently adjusting a bunch of hairs for personal use, and it's great for quickly splitting edges for hairs cleanly, because you can do the edge split modifier, but it's not always going to do what you want it to do. So this is a great little tutorial for that. And I'm just going to kind of go through it right now as you would. So I will hit A to select. I'm going to move my screencast keys again. Beep, boop, beep. Okay. So I'm going to hit A to select the whole hair, and I want to make sure that this is all selected on the UV map as well. And then I'm going to hit F3. I'm going to search, while we're on the UV side, islands, and I want to go to UV seams from islands. Alternatively, you could probably just go this way, UV seams from islands, but I didn't know where it was before, so I kept hitting F3. And it's basically going to create all of these little red lines, and these are going to be our seams for our hair. And you'll notice that they're not like where those weird patches of square were before, so they look pretty good, and they're pretty good for what we want to do. So I'll come into edge mode with 2, and I'm going to select just one edge, and I hit Shift G, select similar, and we'll do seams. So now it's selected all of our seams, and similar to how we did the sweater, similar to how we did the sweater, I'm going to hit Alt M, faces by edges, and now it's kind of more controlled. The edges are a little bit nicer, and that was just a really quick fix for that. And then I can save our file, and then I will bring it into SimStory Studio as I would. If just using this for personal science, you can work over the file. If you're doing it, you shouldn't be doing this for anyone else. If it's someone else's work, you shouldn't be releasing it. Maybe like to your friends. You can make like a clone of it, but you know, just be courteous to people on the internet and their work. Right? If for personal use, I always say anything goes, just as long as you're not being like, oh, I fixed their stuff. Oh, like this is, yeah, just be kind, I guess, you know. So I will bring in our hair LOD. We should see that move. Also, the hat top's gonna still be there. So, but we should see a visible change at least. But yeah, again, personal use. Like if you have a specific character, I always find like, I always mess with stuff for personal use. But you'll see that's visibly changed, and now when you take it into game with your character and that specific character you know you want, it'll be fine. But yeah, so Bog, that's how you do that. Bog, I was only talking to you. I hope no one else was listening. You guys can stop covering your ears now. So that's kind of how you use the Sculpt tools with hair. All right, Cutout hell. Yes, it was fun to squish. And if you have an asymmetrical hair, you just don't turn on mirroring. All right, let's talk about Cutout hell. Cutout hell is real, and it can hurt you. Cutouts are things like doors, counters, like dishwashers and counters. Basically, it tells the game what should be, like where a hole should be. Yeah. So, well, let's start with the easy stuff. Yeah, exactly, like windows, cutting out a wall. So let's start with the easy stuff. Easy stuff would be, it's kind of a, sort of a, like a, it's, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. So I'll look at my own sink. So if you remember when we were playing in game, I had my sink on a counter and it had this giant hole around it. And there is a way to fix that. It's very conditionally dependent on whether, how easy it is. It's very conditionally dependent on whether you can find this DST image in your file. So this is the one I've messed up. On purpose. So it's this little PNG, and often with like CC Creator stuff, they will have their own cutout in their file. If you're working off of a Sims base, an EA base, often this won't be here. And that's when it gets hard. So I have a linky, and I will post it. Basically, you go to this if you're ever having to deal with the cutouts, grabbing a cutout from Sims 4 Studio for a base game sync and you don't have that file, you can't find that file, or maybe if you're adjusting something and you can't find that file, you have to basically bookmark this. I have this bookmarked because it's very, very tricky, because Bruja down here talks about how to get the cutout. So, and it's a lot how to actually get that in, have your game recognize it. So that's the part where it's hard. That's the part where it gets hard. But if you do have this little PNG here, you can fix it. So say you have a CC sync and it has this little PNG, but the cutout's not the right size. So what you would want to do is you would want to export this little PNG into your folder. I have made it bad on purpose. I'll just save over. So sync cutout bad. Basically, this is like a square of your counter, and there's no really specific way, like mathematical way to do this. It's more like looking at your counter and saying, okay, so there's like a gap on the left, and then you'll take this PNG into Photoshop and you'll say, okay, so what if I add a couple pixels of black to the left while my Photoshop opens? Give it a second. She was thinking, okay. So if I bring this in, it's very small. But basically you'll have a file like this, and you can visualize your sync on the counter, and it usually will not be this bad. It'll be a little bit, maybe it's like slightly off, but this is a way you can fix it. So you'll like say, you know what? There's like a gap here on the left. If I make this a couple pixels of black on the left, will that fix my problem? Then you will re-import the PNG and you will go and check it in game and see, did that fix my problem? So that's the easy part. I have my cutout. I saved it because I was afraid of destroying it forever, so I can just drag it on. I know that this is my size of my sink. I know this cutout works, so I would save that as a PNG. And so it's black and then nothing on the background. So no, it's not black and white. It's just black and nothing, and you can kind of see that more here. And then I would just import it over my PNG. I save it, run my life. If the CC creator has set up their file well, which this was a problem I had when I was testing my sync. If the CC creator has set up the file correctly, it should fix the sync, or you can go back and forth until it is fixed, adjusting it. I had an issue with my sync, which my Shuno-san helped me with, and I was very grateful, where I had to make a new instance of my DST image for my sync cutout because it was overlapping with something she already had in her game. So I had to make a unique instance of that, and I'm not going to go over that today because that's very specific and also harder, but if I will go over it in the future if it's important to someone. And also I already have all my swatches in. That sounds like a lot of work and I'd have to relook it up. But if you have this little PNG image, it is easy to fix cutouts on counters. If you want to fix a cutout for a dishwasher, God help you, it's worse. It's really worse. So you basically have to just clone an EA dishwasher and like just replace all the meshes. It's really rough. Dishwashers are weird. Okay, so I will save this, and hopefully when we put it back in our game, our cutout will be fixed. And I will put that in my, gosh, which one was it? Which I have sync test and not sync test. Oh God. I think the sync test. Yes, it was. Okay. Doors. Doors are evil. Doors and windows are evil. They are evil because math gets in the way. So you'll see that this is just a base game door. And if you remember back to our test house, I really messed it up with the cutout. So what we'll want to do, we're going to export our door mesh. And I'll call this LD0. And we're just going to use this as a reference. And this is where hell begins. Door cutouts are mean. Because it's a lot of numbers, a lot of writing things down on a notepad. And they also have a million different cuts. They have cuts for glass, cuts for everything. Basically, I'm gonna hide most of this stuff. Keep that. I want my frame. Okay, so here's our door, basically, at its base, kind of. See, can I keep just the frame? Yeah, we'll do that. Oh, but then it disappears. No, keep the other stuff too. So here's our door, and we need to fix our cutout. So how are we going to do that? Basically, we're going to make a plane, and we are going to adjust where the edges are. And I will turn on screencast keys again. I'll remember. Okay. So we're going to make a new plane that's going to act as our cutout. First, we need to find what is happening with our cutout first. So I'm going to go... I think you could also very similarly change it here if it has this image. Don't quote me on that, but I would give it a try. See, doors are evil. So here is our model cutout. And what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. So this is like the shape of our cutout right now. We come over here, we can go to edges, and then we're going to come up with all of these little edges here. And this is what's telling our door where the cutouts are. You know what? I'm going to actually, I want to no, because this looks more correct than this one. Okay, so yeah, I don't think changing this will fix it. So, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna come over to our edges and we're gonna note down these points, and we're gonna start just kind of putting those in Studio. So the way Studio works is it's not X, Y, Z. It's X, Z, Y, B. Integers, the way that they're organized, just as so this is X, our X value, comma, our Z value, and comma, our Y value. So that is something important to keep in mind when you're doing this. Oh God, can't believe you guys are gonna make me talk about door cutout smell. Evil. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to make a plane. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, not 900, on the whatever axis points it at me. Then I can go here, just grab one vert, come over to item, and I can start typing in these values and see where it gets us, to be honest. So it's going to start moving them. I'm just copying and pasting them from the Sims 4 Studio window. Oh, that did seem to do. Why? Maybe they changed it. Maybe they changed it actually. Huh. Okay. Yeah, so oh. No, that was Z. Sorry, I was on local, not global. Okay. So I'm going to just start copying and pasting these points basically from here. And this is basically all of the edges. I think this one is this point here. Just, here we go. There. So that's that edge. I'm going to the next one, which should be kind of our same X here. And then I'm copying the Y value as well. Since I've only changed one value, there you go, the Z value. Since I've only really changed the height of this, you can see that it's starting to form the shape of a door. So then I'll go to our Z value. I see that this is a -4 and this is our X value. So this is probably going to this point. So I know this isn't like super fun to think about in the brain, but I know that probably this point here is going to be in line with my point above it. So I'm just going to change this to this, change that to 0. Okay, cool. Here's our cutout. So this is our cutout as it stands. You can kind of see it when I go into wireframe mode. And I basically want to raise these points till they go to here. So keep an eye on where they originally were. So originally it was this Z number, right? This is the one I changed. So I'm gonna just put it here. It's good to know. So this is our original number. This is the one you're gonna look for in Sims 4 Studio when you wanna change it. Alternatively, if you wanted to make this wider, you would look for the X number. You would note down the X number because that'd be the one you're changing. But we just wanted to keep this a nice square. So I'm just gonna move this up to here where I like it and it's not clipping outside the door. And then I'm gonna notate that Z number because we only changed it on the Z axis. So this is gonna be our new number. So basically we're gonna go through these edges and we're gonna place this number with this number. And as you can see, I'm a little tricksy because I basically just changed it from a 2 to a 1 for this demonstration. But so basically we're going through this, all of these edges here, and we're looking anywhere it is 1.875, we're changing it to a 2. So if it's 1.875, 1.875, just going through here, we're changing it to our new number. We're changing it from the old number to our new number. If we wanted to make this wider, you would be changing the X value, but I'm changing the Z value, which is the one in the middle, because it goes, Sims 4 Studio goes X, Z, Y. If it's a negative, keep it a negative. It's just, since it's a Z value, it shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, if you're changing an X value, you're gonna have negatives, you're gonna have positives, just keep them as they are, just change the number itself. And then I'll save. And I don't think it updates, oh it did, it updated automatically. You can see now it's more door shaped. So we can save that and we can double check that in our game. So that's how to edit a door cutout. You can do that for windows too. You basically just bring in a plane in your in Blender with your mesh, and then start assigning locations to different points until it kind of starts to make sense and look like what it looks like in the game. So I will go ahead. I will save this again because I'm neurotic. I always forget if I save something. and then I just save it again, and then I'll like forget to actually put it in my game. And that's when you know it's time for a break. All right, while the game loads, that is basically all I have planned for today. Please let me know. We can start thinking about questions, or thinking about going over questions. Is there any questions like pertinent to cutouts specifically right now? But I'm going to load back into Testand's prison. We're going to take a look at our cutouts. And today was really about recognizing problems and being able to, identify problems and fix them quickly if it's something just for your own game, but also really if it's a product you've paid for, because Sims 4 is very much a monetized CC community, how to kind of eloquently and concisely let the creator know what the problem is and what you kind of picked it out as. And even if you're not paying for something, just telling a creator that their stuff is broken is very kind and useful. Just don't be careful when you're no one likes to be called out online, as I've said. No one likes to be called out in a public forum that they've made a mistake. So be kind and DM it to them, the problem, include pictures if you can. Be like, hey, I noticed this seam, there's a seam on your sweater. If you just want to, just let you know. And if they don't get back to you, if they don't update it, at least you know how to fix it on your own end. Or if it's like a creator that's not creating anymore and it's really old CC and you want to fix it up, that's a way to do it. So don't be shady in my name. Go be shady in your own name. But don't tell them that I told you. No, don't do any of that. But we'll take a look at this in game, and then we'll take a look at questions. And that we'll wrap up for today. I think this one went way longer. I apologize. We covered a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think last time it was about 2.5 hours, and we just cast it over 3 hours. So I'm gonna try and cut this down and maybe make shorts of it for YouTube. I'll keep the stream up, the full stream up this time. And we're gonna wait for Bonehilda to stop dancing so we can go look at our cutouts in game, and hopefully they look nice. But yeah, there's always, the best way to always learn is just Google your problem, add Sims 4 Studio onto the end of it, start searching through the forums, but sometimes it's nice to be, also the creator Discord is great, Missouri Yuki's creator Discord is great, but now that we can see that our sink is nice, and there's no giant hole around it, and our door, we can see through it all the way because we fixed those cutouts. So we went over slots, slotting behavior, speculars, edges, making sharp edges on things. This still needs to be fixed. I hate casts. I'm not going back into it right now. Fixing cutouts and decimating in both dirty ways and clean ways. But so thank you guys so much for hanging out for that.